we begin with our first plenary session, Unlocking Innovation, Co-Creating Change Through Digital Public Goods. By the end of the session, we expect our speakers would have left you some food for thought about the challenges and innovative ways to implement, adopt, and scale, and to address the scale DPGs, and to address complex socio-economic issues from our experts. It is my privilege to welcome onto the stage the incredibly accomplished speakers. Erika Arya, India Head of Tech for Dev; Philip Albrecht, Advisor Fair Forward Artificial Intelligence for All at GIC, the German Agency for International Cooperation; Shweta Kolluri, Head of Experimentation at United Nations Development Programme in India, specifically curating unique AI platforms such as GeoAI and DPGs; Pencho Kuzev, Policy Advisor at the Konrad Adenauer Foundation. Please join us on stage. Yeah, thank you. The moderator for the session is Nupura Gaude, Design Lead at CivicDataLab. We open the session now. Over to you, Nupura.
A very warm welcome and a very good morning to all of you. So CivicSabha 2023 commences with celebration for data for public good ecosystem. And speaking about it, I feel there's no other way beginning this conversation with digital public goods. There's a lot of conversation happening around digital public goods here in India and as well as globally. So specifically, if we are looking at India, we are seeing certain level of success in terms of the digital identities, digital payments, or even if you look at the situation of COVID, which pushed us for the need for creating urgent platforms and applications like CoWIN, which was directly interacting with people or citizens in this country on day-to-day basis and solving their needs. Also, if you look at the sector of agriculture, we are having something called as Kisan call centers, which are also solving issues like something for farmers where they're getting information or access to information through simple mediums like through SMSs and things like that, which are helping them to get information in terms of the crop related issues or the weather issues and things. So looking at all these development that has been happening so far, we are seeing a certain level of interaction that is happening between information and people, which is in a way pushing us to ask questions specifically, is there sufficient digital literacy? Is there improvement in access to information or access to data? Or even if there is improvement in access to data for digital governance, especially decision makers who are building all of these things, are even they having access to the right data to build it for the citizens or to build it for the beneficiaries that they're looking at? And also, is it leading for certain kind of civic awareness or certain kind of participatory discussions between the governments, citizens, various stakeholders like civil societies, or even various actors who are playing certain roles in building digital public goods? So this also sets us in the direction where we have to be critical in terms of factors that DPGs are bringing, like protection to digital rights, digital inclusions, and ensuring that there are regulated mechanisms to identify the risk to the vulnerable of these various stakeholder groups that we are looking at. And I think we are at a crucial juncture where DPGs are just not looked from the lens of development, but also looked from the lens of adoption and sustainability. And just to get the conversation started, I think we have a very interesting panel here who have been working in this area and who will be sharing their valuable insights with all of us. And I hope that they will be leaving us with certain food of thought to continue this discussion, enriching discussions around DPGs. So without any delay, I think I can get into the conversation. So I'll like to start with you, Erika. So Erika, we have seen still there is not enough open source digital innovation available for the masses. And especially the kind of work that you have been doing in the space of tech for dev. And you've also built Glyphic, which is also a successful DPG. I have two questions for you. First, why did you choose this path of enabling open source? And secondly, how has it helped in terms of impact for you?
Thank you so much for the question, and good morning, everyone. So yes, true, we at Project Tech for Dev just stand for building and supporting open source platforms. And the big reason why we do that is because we believe that the public money that is coming in has to be used for public good. So that's the underlying principle that we have, and that's the reason why we push more for open source platforms. That is one of them, but there are other reasons also. I think, what is open source? Open source is when the source code is available publicly. Users have access to it. You can easily modify it, and you can even distribute it. Okay, so there is a big community around it. Now, when we come to what are the benefits of using open source, so one of the key things, because we're working in the social sector, one of the challenges that we see is the cost that the NGOs have, with respect to the funds that they have in investing into technology. So open source, I think one of the key things that it brings is that it's very cost-effective and cost-efficient solution for the sector. There are no proprietary license fee that is involved, and hence that even if you compare, like Glyphic, as you mentioned, is one of the chatbot platforms that we've built. And if you compare it with other chatbot builders, which are in the commercial space, they would be at least 4 to 5 times more expensive than what we are offering. And we're able to do that only because it's open source. We have a huge community around it. As I said, the source code is available publicly, so developers can come contribute into building features onto the platform, and hence that brings about flexibility into the kind of features which the NGOs would have wanted. So that's one thing. Second is, because it is all transparent, the source code is available publicly, it also becomes in a way more secure. And hence, when NGOs are working with a lot of information, data that is being collected from their end beneficiaries, you should feel more safe when you're using open source solutions, because in case if it is vulnerable, there are people who are watching it, because there is a big community around it. It's not owned by one particular organization. And hence, because of its open nature, because of it being transparent, it becomes even more secure. And then I would say, like, we have more than 90 NGOs who are using Glyphic today. And across our different other platforms, we have more than 150 NGOs who are using our open source platforms. This provides a good space for a lot of collaboration, learning, and knowledge. So say one NGO wants, I'll just take an example. One of the NGOs wanted to use voice to capture data from their end beneficiaries while they were using chatbot, because they were working with farmers and digital literacy was a challenge there. So when we integrated voice into our overall solution, it was available for any NGO who would come to using that platform post that. This is one of the key things whenever we get into a contract with any of our partners, that whatever we do, whatever we build alongside you, when using this platform, it will be available for public. So we stand by it. So today, that voice integration that happened onto the platform is being leveraged by many more organizations who were facing the same issue of digital literacy. So that is what an open source platform and a transparent nature of a platform allows you to do. So I think so this was on this side where we're talking about more on the development space, but even if we look into the developer community that we are building, because the code is available, is accessible to anyone, developers can come, they can watch the code, they can build features onto it. And a very good example around this is the C4GT, the Code for GovTech program that was run by Samagra. And they were trying to build an open source community around the digital public goods. So wherein they brought in adopters, builders, and contributors together. And it was a 2-month intensive coding program where students from the different tech institutes were brought together, and partners like us who are working in the open source platform systems, they came together and were mentoring these students so that, in a way, we were also building onto our platforms with the features alongside. the students, and on the other side, the students were also learning about the system and about the sector. So I think that was a wonderful program, and where we saw the ecosystem coming together to build a community. So that is what, again, open source enables. Yeah. Thank you.
I think that was a really critical insights that you shared. I think not just having open source technology, but also ensuring there's a community around open source technology who is enabling it and using it is also beneficial. Moving to you, Philip, we heard from Erica about the open source technology and how is it enriching for the community around as well. Taking one step further and shifting the gears to AI. I think no harm in like addressing the elephant, but we know ChatGPT, and we know like even if it is not open source, there is still a lot of usage about it. In that contrast, I want to hear from you. First of all, the perspective with the work that you're doing with Fair Forward, why do we need open source AI? And secondly, if we are building open source AI, what is the importance of having the local native knowledge for certain kind of technologies as well?
Thank you very much, Nupura, and also thank you for the invitation and to CivicDataLab for organizing the event that is dedicated to digital public goods. It's really great to be here. So I work for a project called Fair Forward Artificial Intelligence for All, which is funded by the German Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development and implements a small part of Germany's AI strategy, which is focused on international cooperation with emerging economies on making the benefits of artificial intelligence accessible to everyone. And I think we're a global project working in 7 countries, working with partners in 7 countries, India being one of them, also in Indonesia and 5 countries in sub-Saharan Africa. And in a nutshell, our goal, I would call, is to democratize the development and use of artificial intelligence. And for us, this is not an empty shell, and I want to speak a little bit about what that means for us, because coming to your question. So democratize AI, for me, does not mean making it commercially accessible to everyone. But for me, it means to strengthen local AI innovation, so that we can support local AI innovation for addressing local problems to sustainable development. And I think one thing we've learned in the project is that this is not being done by creating pilot after pilot after pilot. And I think ChatGPT has been very instrumental for the community to refocus on AI, also refocus on responsible AI. Where does the data come from? Is it openly accessible? How is it auditable? And how can we localize the applications? So this really were the benefits. And for our project, I think to achieve democratized AI, we pursue 3 goals. And the first one is to make local data sets more accessible. And oftentimes that means creating local data sets from scratch, because you need high quality. It has to be adapted to a particular context, be it in India, in Rwanda, or Ghana. And one example where we are, or one focus that we have, is actually on creating language data sets. So I'm very much looking forward also talking to you, Erica, after the panel to see how this maybe can be a partnership in the beginning, using voice data sets in regional Indian languages that we are collecting together with the Indian Institute of Science, also of course talking to the Bashini mission of the Ministry of IT and Electronics. So no data, no AI. That's basically the gist of our first goal. You need to have high quality local data sets to make local AI solutions. Secondly, of course, you need capacity, know-how. So we develop e-learning resources that are open educational resources accessible to everyone, that can be reused, adapted, translated, that give introductions into the basic concept of artificial intelligence, both on the responsible AI side, so more policy-oriented, but also on the technical side. And then lastly, we work with governments, state governments, but also union government, on developing responsible AI guidelines. So in one example, we do this with the government of Telangana and Digital Futures Lab to develop responsible AI procurement guidelines. So how public actors can procure AI systems in a safe way. And yeah, as I said at the beginning, one of our key learnings is that building digital public goods for AI takes a very long time. Pilots won't do. I mean, you can always, or any developer will tell you, he or she can create a demo in a very quick time, can also sit on stage and present it. But making it work in a sustainable way with a governance in place that updates the data, that operates it over a certain period of time, that really is the difficult part. And that's why we've gone to focus on creating access to open data, creating and strengthening local know-how, and supporting local AI responsible policy frameworks. And of course, now with ChatGPT, new questions have come to the fore. I mean, are these 3 goals enough, or do we also need to work on how to make computing power accessible to everyone? And actually, also in the wake of the whole ChatGPT hype, I guess one thing that I would like to discuss with the panel, but also with everyone over the next couple of days, is if we make training data sets available, openly available, how can we make sure that the local AI ecosystem benefits? Because more often than not, if you make something available for free, the organizations who benefit first are those that have the resources, that have the know-how, and make use of the digital public goods that we release. So finding ways how to make this work for the local AI ecosystem. We have come up with, I think, a tentative answer, but I would like to discuss that with everyone.
Thank you, Philip. I think really important point about democratizing AI, and it does not just happen overnight, but it also takes like as you say, it takes a village to raise that AI and make it more sustainable through governance and as well as adoption, I think. Very critical thing. I think this is an interesting segue for you, Shweta, because Erica spoke about open source technology and Philip brought in the angle of open source AI. I think you have worked at both the intersections with respect to DCRA, which is another successful DPG that is available, which is working at climate intersection and the agriculture intersection as well. So just if you could elaborate how this integration has worked in the Indian context, and how have you made it work for scale? Because DCRA has scaled now. It started with 1 state and now it's available for like another 7 states as well. So your perspectives on that.
Thanks for, first of all, inviting me to the CivicSabha. I think this is a very unique platform to talk about open source and open AI and digital public goods. So I am a big fan of open source innovations. Just to give a little bit of introduction, I work as head of experimentation for UNDP India Accelerator Labs. So Accelerator Labs is like a very large innovation network. In fact, the world's largest innovation network present across more than 100 countries. UNDP had set it up 4 years back to do development differently. So that's our motto, to try new methods, try new technologies, try new solutions, embed them in programs and see if there is a significant value add so that we can inform the ecosystem and then take it to scale. And of course, our obsession is with impact, and our obsession is with SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. We've been toying around with a large number of innovations, digital, non-digital, community-based, grassroots innovations, different kinds. One of our recent experiences has been around digital public goods. In fact, we have heard this as an upcoming concept, as an upcoming theme within the open source community. But then we thought, okay, let's not try it for the heck of it. Let's try it if there is an actual demand for it. So this is where a demand came from the government of Telangana, wherein they wanted to do something around data for policy. How can the new generation data contribute to policy development? And thanks to the support of Rockefeller, we came into this sort of a request, and then we conducted a collective intelligence workshop to see where to peg our investments, right? Where do we peg our efforts? So the ecosystem of players were invited in agriculture sector. There were about, diverse players in the room coming in and talking about various data needs in agriculture. And as some of you might be already knowing, agri-tech is a very vibrant space in India. We have more than 1,500 agri-tech startups. They are solving for the challenges in many very different ways. But however, the public sector and the non-profit sector was still grappling with the challenge of data sitting in silos, right? And this data not being available at an economic cost, and most importantly, free of cost for those who are, at the front and also tackling these issues. So how do we make this data available to everyone? Like Erica said and Philip said, how do we democratize it? How do we develop it at cheap and at scale, right? So these were some of the key asks that were coming from the agriculture ecosystem of Telangana. And more importantly, they have asked us, please do not solve for a program, a theme, a department, or one community. Do it at scale and do it for the entire ecosystem. So when we were grappling with possible solutions, this is where we landed on digital public goods. Digital public goods operating on principles like non-rivalrous in nature, non-excludable in nature, and also working on sustainable development goals, doing no harm, and also bringing in cooperation and collaboration, like Erica had mentioned, were a great fit for what we are looking for. So we adopted the principles of digital public goods and came up with a prototype called DICRA, Data and Climate Resilient Agriculture. So this is a data platform which is leveraging on large amounts of satellite data, which are already available free of cost, but the development programs were not paying enough attention to how to derive value out of it. Because satellite data by itself does not make a lot of sense to many people. It requires a huge amount of expertise between the data and insight, and then from there to policy. So these were the gaps that we were trying to fill in through DICRA. We did not start from the scratch because it's a DPG approach. We were looking at what is already available as open source. Is there an open code available? Is there an open data available? Is there expertise available? And then we formed a community, just like Erica mentioned, and I'm surprised how our methods are matching quite a lot. So we formed a community around it. Initially we thought, okay, maybe 5-10 people will come in and join us, and then we will figure out how to go about this prototyping of digital public good. But to our surprise, the word spread, and more than 100 digital volunteers, and these are data scientists, right? Like top-notch data scientists. They came in and they were really motivated to contribute towards climate action, right? And they were already very much motivated to contribute to open source. If we had said that, hey, can you do this for just UNDP? We would not get that much of an probably attention. But they were really motivated to contribute towards open source and climate action. And with that sort of an effort, we formed a community. Then more research organizations, some from the universities of Netherlands, some from Indian universities came together. More than 10 organizations came together to make the prototype. Usually, like Philip had said, these things take a long time. So when we were talking to experts about the concept of DICRA and how to break the data silos, they told us that, hey, it will take at least 3 years and $2 million to even begin such kind of a project for the ambition that you've got, right? So we said, okay, let's take a different route. And then when we started forming the data collaborative, we could have the prototype go live within 6 months. And the kind of data layers and insights were coming at tremendous pace because these volunteers were organizing into small teams and they were working on different layers, contributing to insights. And there was another group with a higher level of expertise who were reviewing these layers tandemly. So with this sort of an architecture, we moved forward and we went live. And within 6 months of time, we got 3,000 users, right? Some of these users come from student communities. Some of these users are coming from agriculture extension workforce. Some others were coming from the policymakers community, research community. In fact, there was one person from a previous conference similar to this one who said, he looks at DICRA every day. I was like, hey, even I don't look at it every day, but this is great to hear, right? So the usage, so the stickiness of the application was also an interesting thing that we have come across. And then we thought, okay, one state, and then let's see what the other states want, if they're also interested in similar way. So when we went to Odisha, they said, hey, this is great, but we are looking at this application from disaster preparedness point of view, from drought management point of view. Great. We went to another state and they said, we are looking for customized farm advisory. We would like to use this application in a different way. So it's the same digital public good, but the kind of users and the kind of utility that people are envisaging is very different from each other. So that is another interesting dimension that we have found in this experience. And then the government of Japan's fund had come in and we were able to scale this initiative to 7 more states. And we have set an ambitious timeline of doing it in 4 months, from 1 state to 7 states, and covering whole of the state, not just small parts of the states. And then we thought we can do it in 4 months, but of course we have exceeded a little bit more. We were getting more ambitious. It happened in 6 months' time. And then we attracted the attention of NABARD, India's Apex Development Bank, who came in and said, hey, we wanted to build something on these lines. So how much would it cost for us to invest in this, or what sort of licensing is involved, how much do we pay? We said nothing. Right? Nothing, how is it possible? Then we explained how this digital public good concept came in and how it works, that there are no software licenses and you can reuse, redistribute, and build value-added products on the top of it as you like. So that came in as a pleasant surprise to them. And now NABARD is invested to take this to pan-India scale and scale it up to all the 28 states of India. So this is how we moved from, let's say, a prototype which happened very quickly because of data collaborative. Digital public goods can also be built in many very different ways. But because of the data collaborative approach, there were hundreds of makers and thousands of users coming in and then contributing to the platform. And as Accelerator Labs, we were mostly engaged as facilitators for this sort of an ecosystem. And compared to market value, like Erika had said, we could achieve all of this at 1/10 of the market cost. Because if you remember, the experts have told us to start with $2 million. We have started with $20,000, right? So we have achieved all of it at a significantly low cost and 5 times the pace at which the market develops. And this was possible only because of collaboration and cooperation across the actors. Let me just stop here. Thank you.
Great. I think that was very fantastic, Shweta, because you broke down the process of what it takes to make it a DPG and what it takes also to make a DPG at that scale. So thank you for sharing that entire timeline with us. I think this is where things are getting interesting if you look at all the transition from open source technology, open source AI, integration of both the things and having a DPG in place. But as Philippe rightfully said, no data, no AI. And coming to you, Pencho, specifically your expertise and the work that you have done for open data specifically. If you look at all these things, data is the fuel, and access to data is very critical for building a resilient DPG and also scaling it at large. But my question to you is, first of all, is there sufficient amount of accessibility of open data for building a DPG? And secondly, even if we receive access to that data, what is the quality of data that is coming in, and how do we ensure that it has that framework in place to ensure that it is of high quality, so that it becomes and makes the DPG more resilient?
Thank you very much. I'm not sure I can answer all of your questions, but first of all, many thanks for the great invitation. I think this is really a great idea to celebrate data for public good. I have attended plenty of conferences, and we have discussed in many instances open data, but this is probably the first time that we are celebrating data for public good. So really congratulations to you that you came to this idea to celebrate this kind of data. Also, this is really a bit kind of different event where we really discuss something concretely. When I start my day in Berlin, probably I have at least 5, 6, 7 invitations a day related to AI, and I can't listen to all those talks and all those declarations that at the end of the day doesn't produce any impact on the market. And I'm not sure, do we have some governmental representatives in the room? This is something that really matters to you, because this is something where you have the control in the area. This is up to you. Either you're going to invest energy and money in this area, and then you're going to see the effect at the end of the day, or you're going to start thinking of some restrictive measures, and you're not going to see any effects in near future. But coming back to the topic, if I ask all of you what's the definition of digital public good, probably we have all of us some kind of different definition. And I believe one of the most cited definition comes from the UN, saying digital public goods are open software, open data, AI models, and standards, contents, etc., that make digital public infrastructure operational reality. So, in order to create change through DPGs, you need firstly awareness, and secondly, you need a regulatory framework. Why awareness? So firstly, I'm not sure that everybody is aware why this data is that much valuable to all of us. We talked, I think, in the last 10 years, and we advocated, many of us, open by default, that must be our priority, etc. But the reality on the field looks a bit different. We have realized that open by default is illusion. So that's why we have said maybe it makes sense to focus on really uncertain data that have biggest impact, that affect our way of living to all of us, that are that much important for academia, society, economy, startups, etc., where we should focus and define high standards. Do we have the picture? Okay. So we have created a list of so-called high-value data sets in Europe, basically a category of 6 groups, where we have said this kind of data must be free of charge, available through APIs, machine readable, etc. But we are talking only about these 6 categories, hoping that these categories, if implemented properly, are going to create some kind of ecosystem in Europe. But we are just at the beginning. Will it work in the practice? We'll see it in the next couple of years. Secondly, I've mentioned a regulatory framework. Why is that important? Because you can't expect that everybody is aware of it, and you can't expect that everybody is going to offer this kind of data free of charge. It's a costly issue. You need investments. And sometimes it's really difficult to argue and to say to some public undertaking, you have to publish all your data free of charge, APIs. But why? It produces I expect to produce innovation by myself, and I'm afraid if I offer this kind of data that some big undertakings are going to use all this data, and I'm going to lose my business model at the end of the day. So this is wrong way of thinking, but still it's a costly issue, so that's why you need a regulatory framework in order to make the pressure and to define common standards in the society and the economy. In order not to have excuses at the end of the day. So if we discuss one of these categories of data, you have clear standards, and if you don't implement them, then you have the regulator who is going to say, wait, if you belong to this kind of data, you have to respect the regulatory framework. Yeah, I'll stop here, and I think when it comes to the other problems, we're going to continue in the second group of intervention.
Oh, great. Thanks a lot, Pencho. I think the whole aspect that you brought about the regulatory framework and the criticality around it, because I have a follow-up question for the second round. Probably this is a common question to the entire panel, and I'm just going back to my opening note where I said that from now, I think it's just not from the lens of development that we have to look at DPGs, but also from the lens of adoption. For whom are we building for? And at the same time, ensuring that all stakeholders have equal rights when specifically there is a development of DPG coming into place. Maybe, again, starting from you, Pencho, for the next question. Specifically your work around the European digital single market. And there's a lot of diversity within the European Union as well. Knowing that there is going to be a scale of DPGs, knowing that people are going to build digital innovations around data-centered work and everything, how are you seeing it is going to create a level playing field for the various stakeholders? Just squaring it back to the regulatory framework as well. How is it going to create that? And what are the challenges you see?
Yeah, thinking of the open source discussion at the beginning and data necessary for the AI, thinking of the internet, how was it created? The internet was created as an open concept. And look at the internet today. Proprietary solution everywhere. And basically, you have to be happy that you have this kind of enthusiasm in this kind of NGOs like CivicDataLab, who's doing really extremely important work next to all those players. We call them in Europe gatekeepers. And also in the field of cloud solutions, hyperscalers. So basically, data sharing without cloud doesn't function, but how many cloud providers do we have in Europe who are defining the rules? We have 3 of them. How many undertakings do we have in the platform economy who are defining the rules? Approximately 4, 5. So we have inequalities. The markets have tipped, and you can't expect that some startups are going to challenge the situation. So for those kind of problems, you need different kind of remedies in order to level the playing field. I've mentioned all these undertakings because they are that much important. They become so much important. When I see the iPhones in the room or the mobile devices, basically we are all switching between Gmail, X, formerly Twitter, etc. We are in the wallet garden of all these undertakings. So basically, in order to create a chance for kind of contestable markets, we need to impose stricter rules. We need to impose rules for data sharing when it comes to AI models, because I'm not sure that we have a situation on the market where alternative undertakings are in a position to develop this kind of tools like ChatGPT, because you need the data, you need the computing power, you need the resources, and who have the resources. Basically, the framework that I am advocating for is to define stricter rules in order to say since you have this kind of special position on the market, you have to behave a bit differently than the other undertakings on the market. Meaning, without doing anything wrongly, you have to share some kind of data with competitors. You have to unbundle some kind of activities in your undertakings. And thirdly, you are not allowed to leverage your market power from one segment into another segment. And something what really matters, you're not allowed to apply killing acquisitions on the market. So that's why I think we should really be careful when we are dealing with these kind of questions in the economy, because basically we are that much dependent on all these gatekeepers that we are simply not in a position to do anything without them. They have that kind of financial power that even not a single European country can sit on the same table with them. It's really problematic.
Thanks, Vencho. I think that's leaving us with a different perspective and also ensuring us to think about it, how access to data should be tackled when it comes to economic issues, and also looking at the different power dynamics that come into place. Coming back to you, Shweta, again, especially because DCRA has scaled now, and it's not easy in terms of adoption when you're changing from states to states, as you were mentioning. There is a different type of data cultures that come in. And also at the same time, there is two angles. One is governance and also the end users for whom this platform is benefiting. How are you seeing the adoption? And do you see that impact there?
Thanks for the question. And like you said, adoption is very, very important. Ultimately, that's where the end game lies, right? I mean, all of this data for whom and why, right? All of this effort for whom? So, in fact, when we were, making DCRA, as I said before, we have formed a data collaborative, which had data scientists and also agriculture experts. But at the same time, we have included some of the potential users. From UNDP's point of view, since our core mandate is to support governments and work with government agencies, so public sector and working closely with the government becomes the foremost important thing. So we were actively engaging with the governments and at the same time bringing them to be part of the data collaborative. So I would say the users, the end users for us in this case were policymakers. So they were involved in the collaborative right from the beginning. So that happened with Telangana. But of course, when we went to other states, the expectations were different. And you have to keep the fuel on, and you have to also onboard them in some of these conversations, the conversations that have moved much forward, right? So at the time of scaling, managing expectations was, in fact, very, very difficult, because we created something which was more foundational in nature, and different actors started looking at this platform from various lenses. So, and some of the expectations, once you see the prototype and the product, the thought flies in so many different directions. Acha, we can do this, we can do that. This is also possible, that is also possible, right? And they think that you have got a magic wand as a data collaborative, like throw a challenge and they will solve it for you in a week's time. But that does not happen. So for us, managing expectations while dealing with the government agencies was very important. And we have also seen a lot of transnational requests. So there were 10 other countries and the government counterparts who also approached us and said, this is good. Since you say that this is plug and play for any other geography in the world, can you quickly make this for us in 10 days, 15 days, right? So the expectations really rise quite a lot. So yeah, part of the game is to manage those and prioritize and set the expectations right and tell them what goes into the process in order for them to understand the complexity in the back end. Because the front end is very, very simple, it's user friendly. It does not require any sort of expertise in remote sensing or geospatial technologies or in open satellite data or in machine learning. The front end is like very easy for the users, but the back end is quite a lot complicated. And it takes a lot of consultations and with diverse stakeholders to set the expectations right. So this was a key challenge. And another one, when we were eventually, handing it over to the India's apex development bank, NABARD, we have seen that they were, first of all, fascinated with this sort of digital public good architecture and how this was built at such a low cost. But at the same time, NABARD wanted one or two focal points for everything. And in a distributed architecture, when there are so many different people coming in and contributing, it kind of becomes difficult to set expertise or assign one person as a Spock. So it took us a little bit of time to explain the way we work. It seems a little bit chaotic for partners at times, but this is something that can be solved with consultations with the teams.
Right. No, very, very interesting thing, because we at CivicDataLab are also quite fans of consultations and having that two-way dialogue. I think similar case for you, Philip, because there's also a lot of governance involved when you are trying to push capacity building of local AIs for the local governance as well. What are the challenges that you forecast here?
Thank you. And I want to take one step back quickly to the adoption. And also link it to, Sweta, you have said, because, foundations take a long time. So building the digital public goods at the beginning, this is what really takes a long time. And the great thing is, if a lot of people are doing it, and if they are consistently doing it, then innovation can happen very quickly, also in 6 months, right? The success of DICRA is also based on the availability of data that was there before. And this is also something that we have seen in our work, collecting voice data sets, for example, in different languages in sub-Saharan Africa. So when COVID hit and we had collected high-quality voice data sets in Kenya, Rwanda, the government of Rwanda was able to very quickly develop a chatbot that would support information sharing on how to protect yourself, what is the current infection rate, etc. And this way supporting and actually alleviating their own government health services by using this kind of chatbot. So we had not built it for this reason, because we didn't know that COVID was coming, obviously. But once the digital public good was accessible, this was a use case that was possible very, very quickly. And what it also shows, and here I would also like to come to the question of, big tech and who has the power to innovate, etc. So what digital public goods can do in that space is they can move the competition from who is able to collect the data to who is able to build the innovative services that people are requesting. So instead of which startup is able to raise the funding to collect the data, and then the value of the startup is dependent on the data that they have without necessarily having a service yet. How can we, create digital public goods, make them accessible so that, dozens of startups work with the same data set to build different kinds of solutions at the same time that are then adopted by users, including government, etc. So this is also one of the ways how we think how DPGs can strengthen local AI ecosystems. And maybe I want to leave one thought when it comes to adoption, which is a little bit of a nerdy topic, but it's something that we are running into again and again, is the question of licensing when you talk about digital public goods, right? So what is a smart or good license that allows everyone to reuse it, but at the same time, protects the community that has invested a lot of resources, time to build the digital public good, right? And that it's not, in quotation marks, taken away by someone from the outside who has the resources, uses the data set, and then innovates it. So I mean, different concepts are gradual openness. So are you governing the data and you're determining who has access, on what grounds? Do you make it dependent on what are their aims with using the data? Or do you go away with licensing and you just go for copyleft licensing or share alike, meaning that whoever uses the data that you created that has a copyleft license, whatever they are creating or adding to the data, they also have to again share it under an open license that is copyleft. And this way we work with digital public goods that are evolving over time, improving over time, and everyone is adding to it.
Community, who doesn't want to do that? It helps you, build that two-way communication. So we see ample use cases where, it can really add value to the NGOs, but again, we face a lot of challenge in getting them converted, bringing them on board onto the platform. And I think there are two key things. One is, limited resources. Second is on the technical expertise within the organization to understand. First, I would say to even articulate the problem that you are trying to solve. I think that is the first step. We shouldn't be thinking, generally you think, oh, I'm taking a tech solution and it's going to solve the problem for me. So we always say, tech is an enabler. It cannot be a solution, okay? So you need to first be very sure on what you're using that tech for. So and as I was sitting here, I was thinking about, we started with a boot camp for our glyphic NGOs. So that was one of the the approaches we took to onboard more users. We felt, if we're going to support them very closely for 2 days, tell them that, we'll get your chatbot ready in 2 days, that'll really excite them and, get them onboarded. And the first bootcamp that we ran, it had just 2 NGOs. And it's been like around 8 to 9 months. Both of those NGOs are currently just there on the platform, and only one of them is taking it forward. So then we started thinking, we gave them entire kind of support that they needed. Then why they were not able to pull through? Then we started thinking, is it the money? Because we charge a 15,000 setup fee right up front. So then we said, okay, let's do another boot camp this time, and we're going to waive off the setup fee. We're going to do away with the, help them do their pilot for those first 3 months free of cost. Okay, again, we started, giving them that hand-holding support. And again, we see that out of those 12 NGOs that we onboarded this time, there are only a handful, I would say 4 or 5 who are really serious. And another thing that we found through this bootcamp was that clarity on the use case. We did ask them to submit a use case right in the beginning of the program, but now things have absolutely changed, and we question ourselves. So first thing I would say is that having that expertise within the organization to know why I want to use this tool. Are you able to articulate that problem? So I think that was very evident from this boot camp that came through. Second is on the funding. I would say whenever we talk to NGOs, they've not even, experienced the chatbot, and they start thinking about scale. And they start calculating what would be the cost if I am going to run this for 1 lakh of my beneficiaries for, say next 3 years. And then they say, I don't have this much fund. So we just tell them that you start small. Start with doing a small pilot first. See the impact of it. And when you see impact of that solution in your program, that is the time when you can think about scale. You will definitely think about more collaborations to help you get that impact. You will bring it into your funding proposals. But first you need to see that impact. So take steps one by one. Good to think about scale and to be futuristic, but when you're taking on something absolutely new, give some time to actually run that pilot and to see it, whether it's actually working for you or not. So I think these are like a couple of challenges that we have seen NGOs, working with the NGOs, and that leads to a slower adoption on 2 solutions, which we really feel can add a lot of value to their programs. Yeah.
Thank you, Erica. I think the entire part of keeping it testing, keeping it validating from the users is quite interesting. I think we can open the floor for Q&As. In the interest of time, we can take 2 questions from the audiences. Just requesting you if you could introduce yourself and to whom the question is. We have a question at the back.
Hi, thank you for this session. My name is Abhishek. I'm from Bangalore. I have one question for you, sir. What are the 6 types of data sets that you said should be made open? Because obviously we couldn't see it very clearly on the screen. If you could just elaborate on that, that would be very helpful.
So, I don't know, you could read it. Geospatial data, you have statistic, you have meteorological data, you have Earth observation, and you have beneficial ownership. And according to Gaurav, I think the group is much bigger. I think, according to him, you have like 10 categories. And how we realize that, how we have came to this number is we made plenty of studies in Europe, and we have asked where the people have the biggest interests, which data produce the biggest impact on the most pressing issues, SDGs, climate change, economic impacts, importance for startups, etc. And then we have asked what is the situation with these kind of data sets across Europe, because there were countries that were better prepared. Some kind of data was accessible, and in other countries, this kind of data was not accessible. And the problem was we are addressing the issue of freedom of information. So we were not in a position to address the issue in a proper manner at European level. So we have decided only to address and to regulate the categories of data which make the biggest sense and where we have the biggest expectation at the end of the day. So I think the biggest issue will be with the public undertakings who are addressed with this kind of data set. They will be obliged to publish all this data. And the second issue will be how it will be implemented across Europe, because we have some issues that are not that easy to implement, like APIs, semantiology, etc.
Great. We can go for one more question from the audience.
My name is Alok Karunam. I'm from CGIS, Center for Effective Governance of Indian States. My question is to Sweta and Philip. So what have been some of the approaches to capacity building and of various stakeholders involved, particularly the government ones? And do you think that just like ecosystem mode of developing the solutions, there is an equally an urgent need of taking an ecosystem approach for capacity building as well?
Thank you. So we have a couple of approaches when it comes to capacity building. One I briefly mentioned at the beginning, which is a large set of e-learning courses that are available as open educational resources and are also available on the free and open source e-learning platform called Atingi, which is run by GIZ. So all these courses are accessible to everyone in 2 ways. One, to actually do the e-learning, and secondly, to download it, change it, and adapt it to your target audience if you have a different one. When it comes to government stakeholders and capacity building there, it's a really interesting question. And I think at the very beginning of our project, which started at the end of 2019, and actually running until now, the interesting part is that there's a huge demand and interest across governments, no matter who you talk to. And I guess this applies to the countries in the European Union, as well as it does to countries in Sub-Saharan Africa, to India, Southeast Asia, etc. And one approach that we have pursued now is called, and now bear with me, it's called the Africa-Asia AI Policymaker Network. So it's a group of policymakers from our partner countries who are sitting usually in the IT ministries, if they have them, or in the Ministry of Communications, wherever the center of AI policy is within that particular country. And these officials have come together in a joint capacity building workshop, which was an introduction to the technical workings of artificial intelligence, but also responsible AI, governance of digital public goods, etc. And following from that capacity building program, we have facilitated this network. So all the policymakers from the 7 countries are still in exchange, learn from each other, because, I mean, let's face it, everyone is struggling with the same questions. The answers might be different. They are, adapted to the local context. But how do we govern it? How do we regulate AI while stimulating the local economy? How do we approach the question of open data and AI? The questions are the same. The approaches might differ, and this way we have now this peer learning network. So they meet on a regular basis to discuss different topics. I mean, AI for climate action, what's the role of public finance in AI, etc. So this is one of the ways that we try to support.
Thank you. And just adding on to what Philip has mentioned, of course, we also do the peer learning networks and so on and so forth, make more and more video tutorials. But definitely government, when we discuss with various departments and at various levels, it's not a monolith, right? So different agencies, they have very different capacities of understanding. Like both of us have been engaging with the Department of IT in Telangana. Their understanding is way ahead of us, and then they say, hey, we want this, 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 and this as well, right? So they know what is in and what is a fast-moving technology, so they understand the technology pretty well. But when you go to other departments, you have to start from the scratch and conduct workshops and so on and so forth. But again, we have found that in many cases, the senior management is fast-moving, they have got a vision, they have got a good understanding. When you go to the middle management and, in fact, to the ground level, the perception could be different. Sometimes they may think that, hey, this adds more work, right? So this is more work for me. And then there's some sort of a resistance too. So organizational culture and that sort of a change is very important. Of course, the senior management can drive it to a certain extent, but I think the platforms can also be built in such a way that it doesn't appear like too much of a burden on the person who is at the forefront and implementing this technology. I think a lot of design features also need to be considered, considering the end user and their capabilities, their motivation and their interest in applying technology. So these are some of the things that we do.
In the interest of time, I will have to conclude this session, but you can catch our panelist over tea, coffee, and also during lunch. I think this session has brought in a lot of insights for us, specifically the whole effort of democratizing things and ensuring that there is a lot of ethical space for different stakeholders who are going to be in a way doing contribution to DPGs and also like consuming from these DPGs. So how do we build that? And at last, of course, it leaves us all practitioners with this entire journey that we have to follow for extensive adoption of digital innovation and digital public goods that we are building for. So once again, I thank all of the panelists for sharing their valuable insights and contributing to CivicSabha and the open data public ecosystem today. Thank you so much.